Hi, everybody. Today's discussion will be about process control for Class A drinking water exams. We're going to be talking about all those questions that you come across that are under a generic category called process control, which shows up on the category sheet that you get at the end of the exam. And that seems pretty vague on what that really is. And today I'm going to discuss with you how to handle some of those questions and some thoughts and opinions on where you might be able to get some extra studying from the books. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I think this will be helpful for you as you get ready for your A exam. Our copyright information is shown here. Remember that all rights are reserved. No part of this publication can be reproduced, stored in any retrieval system, transmitted in any form or any means, electronically, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the prior written permission of the University of Florida Trio Center. Thank you. Today is May 1st, and my information is shown here, and it's also above my head here, over here. And you can reach me at the information shown here. You can reach me either at this phone number, or you can reach me at rtrigar@trio.ufl.edu. And I certainly like to hear from you. And hopefully when you guys take your test and you see if this stuff was helpful, let me know, and we can go on from there. All right, so we have some important references to talk about. A lot of people ask, like, where do these questions come from? How come I can't find these in the, in the books? I'm not sure what to study. So we've got our couple of course manuals here. These are the California State University, Sacramento Water Treatment Plant Operation, Volume 1. And we're going to be pulling references from that for the process control portion. And then we also have the Water Treatment Plant Operation Volume 2, which is right here. So this has been around a long time, and they're always making revisions to the courses. So by the time you see this, it might be a different version here, but the references will still be there and the information's still inside. So I'll be kind of pointing out where the information is in these books and where you need to be studying and what areas you can look at a little extra when you're getting ready for the process control portion. It says here to pay attention to any section that has wording like evaluation of the plant or evaluation of the data that was collected, evaluation of jar testing data, troubleshooting. Obviously, if you see troubleshooting charts in any of the process sections, you definitely want to check troubleshooting. Visual observations are essentially like in the sedimentation tank chapter, when they talk about settling tanks and they talk about visual observations in the flocculation process. Those are definitely areas to study. Anytime you come across anything that says abnormal conditions in the processes, abnormal conditions are listed in the lime softening, in the surface water treatment, which is coagulation, flocculation, sedimentation. There's abnormal conditions showing in the filtration portion, disinfection, ion exchange softening. Definitely pay attention to those sections. That's where a lot of this process control comes from. So the questions are based out of that information, and you need to be able to go through and the choices that are given and be able to pull the right answer out of there. You'll need to have a firm grasp and a firm comprehension of the treatment plant processes and know what chemicals we're going to do what to the pH and the alkalinity, and what happens when we get to certain pHs and certain alkalinities. Those are very important components. So what is exactly process control? How do they come up with these chapters or these questions? It's pretty vague. Process control makes up about 36 questions or so on the drinking water A exam, but that's pretty vague. What is it and how do you study the process control? Well, don't forget, anytime you come across a question on process control or wanting you to kind of solve a problem, or they give you a scenario and you have to come up with a solution, you're going to be needing to be able to critically think think through some things like describe. The word shown here, describe, would mean describe possible adjustments that would help to achieve process optimization. We also see where it says interpret, interpret laboratory data, interpret size of the flock, interpret conditions that are happening in the settling of the jar test, interpret those things. Select the appropriate corrective actions. They're going to get a list of 4 possible choices, and you want to make sure that, you go through and pull the ones out that obviously there's going to be one that probably can be thrown out that you might say, okay, I know it's not this one, but then what about the other 3? And you got to really know the relationship between things like hardness and pH and alkalinity and all that fun stuff that goes into this treatment plant operation. You need to be able to think critically. It's tough to train people to do this. That's what's causing us some issues in the training world, is how do we actually teach critical thinking? It's very difficult, I think. This is something that you build within yourself, and these skills where we're critically thinking include observations, analyzing, interpreting things, reflecting on things that may have happened and building upon your experience, evaluation, inferences that are kind of pulled from the question that's given. You might have to explain something or solve problems, and then involves decision making. So critically thinking is something that some of us have to train ourselves a little bit more on that, on thinking through whole scenarios before just jumping on a decision. The questions that involve process control require you to use any of those skills listed above to arrive at what is the single best answer on the test. And remember, the exam is written from the books. What is the reference manual saying? So that's where we need to really think about what do I think the right answer is, and what would the book say? What would the reference manual say? The scenario type questions are ones that are typically worded, they're kind of wordy themselves. It might be kind of long, and sometimes they're kind of, vague, where you have to infer what they're asking, but it is something that you can do, and it's found, these references are found in the books. Here's a good question, or a good example of a question. It says the operator finds that the hardness of the finished water of the lime softening process is near the hardness of the raw water, and the process appears to have failed. What could the problem be with the lime softening process? What's the problem? Well, first off, let's analyze this. The operator is finding that the hardness of the finished water of the lime softening process, so we know it's that type of process, and the hardness of the finished water is similar or close to what the hardness is of the raw water coming in. So obviously there's hardness in the water, or they wouldn't need the lime softening plant. So if the water is going out and it has the same, almost the same hardness as what came in, it may look like the process didn't really do its job. So here's the potential answers. Here's 4 potential choices. It says A, calcium and magnesium have gone back into solution due to an excessive dose of potassium permanganate in the source water. B, too high of a lime dose has caused the hardness leaving the process to be near 0, thereby consuming all the alkalinity needed for softening. Letter C says, too high of a carbon dioxide dose reduced the pH too rapidly, causing the calcium and magnesium to dissolve back into solution. Letter D says, too low of a carbon dioxide dose increased the pH to the point where calcium and magnesium cannot redissolve and precipitate out. So you really need to be able to go through these 4 choices and look for things that work together, things that must go together. Similarly, we can say something like, let's say calcium and magnesium in letter D are not going to redissolve and precipitate out. If they redissolve, they won't precipitate out. So that's something that we don't want them to redissolve, and then they won't precipitate out. So that's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. Nowhere in the question did it say what we were feeding potassium permanganate in the source water. I'm not really sure where that's coming from. That sounds it sounds kind of hokey to me. I mean, hopefully you're thinking, well, what are they talking about permanganate in the source water? So that really leaves us like B and C that look pretty good. So let's go ahead and analyze this. We have to interpret the situation. The examinee, this is you, must be familiar with several aspects of lime softening and how the process works. You don't have to work and have super experience in one. You just need to know really how the process functions and what should do what, theoretically. So you have to comprehend the actual plant problem. That's obvious. We need to remember the effect of CO2 on carbonate hardness at various pH levels. What happens when the pH gets to a certain level with carbonate and bicarbonate and hydroxide? What is happening in the process at certain pH levels? And then why do we use CO2 in the lime softening process? Why are we using it? CO2 dissolves into the water to form carbonic acid. So it's actually trying to lower the pH. So we need to make sure that we're familiar with what the heck the CO2 is about in the first place. The stability of the treated water at higher pH values. As we raise the pH up to over 10 and into the 11 range, to get rid of maybe magnesium, then the water is very unstable. Things are precipitating out of solution. They're becoming undissolved. They're becoming particulate almost, and they're coming out of solution. So insoluble, and they're settling in these tanks, and that's what we want to happen. So we have to also pay attention to how CO2 affects the pH and the alkalinity. So this is kind of a coaching and counseling session for you to say, this is how you're going to have to answer those types of questions. So caution, when you read the question, try your best to keep an open mind. Don't try to fit in what you do at your treatment plant and try to make it fit to what you think the question's asking. Just remember that the questions are not based on your plant. They're based on those reference manuals that I talked about a little bit earlier. So what would the book say? What does the test? Focus on what you learned in your class. Focus on what you read in those manuals. Focus on what you studied. Don't focus on what you don't know. Focus on what you do know. Focus on the fact that you know that as lime is added to the water, the pH is going to rise. And if we add CO2 to the water, the pH is going to decrease because it makes a weak acid called carbonic acid. So don't try to focus on what you think you don't know. Just because you might not work in that type of plant doesn't mean you can't answer this question. So the one best answer is actually letter C. Too high of a carbon dioxide dose reduced the pH too rapidly, which would cause the calcium magnesium hardness to go back into solution. It actually helps them go from an insoluble form when they were precipitating out to a soluble form, which is back in the water as hardness, and it becomes carbonate hardness again. And that's not what we want. We want it to actually come out of solution and settle in the recarb tanks, or be trapped on a filter if that's what we're going to do. But definitely need to know what happens when we put too much CO2 dose in a water that may have been at a very high pH, like say 11 or so for magnesium removal. And by the way, the reference is shown here. The reference for that question is California State University's book on water operation, volume 2, the 6th edition is what I have here. It's section 14.314, which is on page 84. So you can look that up and you'll find the reference there. Okay, let's try another one. This one says, the appearance of fine flock particles washing over the effluent weirs of the sedimentation basin could be an indication of what? Well, all right, so we're having appearance of flock particles washing over the effluent weirs of the sedimentation basin, and they're fine. What does that word mean here? The word fine doesn't mean like, oh, they're perfect, or oh, they're the best flock particles, and that's exactly what we want. In this particular case, the word fine means very, very small, very tiny, residual coagulant particles, if you will, almost like some of the aluminum sulfate has made it to the very end and it hasn't been precipitated out. So fine flock particles in this case mean very, very tiny, somewhat maybe turbid appearing flock particles that are going over the weir. So this should not happen in the sedimentation tank, obviously. So here's the potential answers. A, the aluminum sulfate dose is too high. B, the alum dose is too low. C, the coagulant aid is being overdosed. Or D, the detention time is too long. So we definitely don't want to read more into the question than what's given. We don't want to just assume that the coagulant aid has been dosed because we don't know what the dosage is. We don't know really if that's even a part of it. Generally speaking, the coagulant aid is something that gives weight to the flock and settles things out early in the sedimentation tank and helps give some ballast or weight and density and structure to the flocks. So the coagulant aid being overdosed is probably not going to be the right answer, but you'll notice it's in letter C and it's the longest answer choice. And a lot of people think it's the right answer because of either it's letter C or it's the longest answer. In this particular case, that is not going to be correct. So you're going to select the one best answer, and in this case, the aluminum sulfate dose or the alum dosage is too high. And why is that? Because we said it was very fine alum or very fine flock particles making its way out to the end. These are very, very small pieces of flock that didn't get precipitated in the flocculation process and settling out rather in the sedimentation tank, and they're very light and they're making their way all the way out to the end of the tank. The answer is found in California State University's Volume 1, the 7th edition, and it's section 3.6.2.4 on page 155. And when you're looking at questions like this, be sure to identify where the problem is occurring and that you recognize that. When you get to that reference and you start looking this stuff up, you're going to see where it says, this is the observation coming out of the coagulation flash mixing basin, or this is the observation and what it should look like out of the flocculation basin. You're also going to see where it says this is what it should look like in the settling tank. And in this particular question, it's asking about the sedimentation tank. So now fine flock particles and really small discrete particles are fine and good if they're in the coagulation part of the plant, but not in the sedimentation part of the plant. So I want to make sure that you're paying attention to those types of things. So here's some study tips. When you're preparing for your drinking water A exam, it's really helpful to study any of the chapters or sections of the chapters that have things like process control or evaluating plant performance or abnormal conditions. Remember I said earlier, when you come across those in those books, go in and pay special attention to those. If you're not familiar with lime softening and you think that's a tough part, go back into the book and look under those sections, and it'll tell you what you should and should not have happening in those basins. So that's the areas you really need to study up on. Anything that you come across that says a troubleshooting guide, that's a big point to check. Read those areas, read the troubleshooting guides, and be familiar with the words that they're using. Try not to overthink it. A lot of times we read more into the question that's really there. We try to fit it into our treatment plan. We try to say, oh, well, I've done this and this is what happens. And at my plant, we don't do this. I've never done this before. Remember, it's about what's in the reference book, not about your plant. And sometimes people try to, word more things into the question. And my opinion is just try to only look at what the question's giving you and don't try to add your own stuff into it. Sometimes the question is that easy. On the A exam, there are some very tough questions, but there's also some that are somewhat easy and somewhat simple. Try not to get caught up in that and think that it's a trick question because you think it is easy. It may actually be that you know the material and it is actually that easy. I know that sounds crazy, right? One last thought. I do want to share with you that as a trainer, we talk to other trainers, and some of us have kind of noticed that as people are progressing very quickly in the industry, like you're moving up very quickly in the industry, you've gotten your C license, you sat for your B exam, now you've finished your 3 years and you've got your B license, and you want to sit right away for this A exam. Now, not to discourage anybody, of course, we don't want to do that, but I do want to caution you that if you're somewhat young in the industry, maybe just having 3 years of experience, you may not actually have experienced these problems that the questions are asking about, or you haven't been involved enough to see like upset conditions at your treatment plants, or maybe you just started at this plant and you really don't know what an upset condition might look like or have been through it. You may not have decision-making experience, decision-making judgments to do when at your facility. You might not be the person making those process control adjustments. Maybe somebody says, hey, go out and turn this pump up, go out and turn this pump down, but you don't know why. So get involved with the actual operation of your facility, kind of come up with your own scenarios and see if yours matches up with what your bosses say, hey, this is what we need to do right now. Kind of start thinking ahead, start doing that critical thinking that we talked about a little bit earlier. So just want to kind of caution you guys, the test is tough. It is a hard exam. Remember what you're trying to do here. You're trying to become the Class A drinking water operator that could be the lead chief operator of a water treatment facility that's very complex to operate with a lot of different processes, treating water to serve a large population. With that said, we do take it very seriously that these exams really must, in a way, discriminate against the people that could and should be operating facilities and making decisions like this versus ones who really aren't ready to be making decisions like this. So the exams are there for essentially that purpose. So they don't just hand you this license because you filled out the application properly. You really need to know your stuff. I'm just kind of giving you some words of advice here and a little bit of caution. Be sure to go back through the California manuals and check those sections that I talked about. Review those exam practice questions that are in the back of those books. California courses have a gray pages in the back that are practice tests or discussion and review questions. You'll find those in there. Use those, practice with those. They have the answer key there. Contact me if you have questions. If there's something I can do to help, if you need some clarification, please let me help you with that. But by all means, study, study, study. Take your time with those questions. It may take you a long time to read through what actually is being asked of you on the test, but you can do it. I know you can. You can get it done. You can pass this exam. Don't give up. If I could pass it, I know you can pass it. So I know that sounds cliche to say, but I do really, truly believe that. I do want to thank you for watching, and good luck on your tests. Let us know how you do and keep in touch with us. Again, my email address is here. Shoot me an email. Let me know how you do. If this video was helpful, if not, let me know, whatever I can do. Anyway, take care, everybody. Be safe, be healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.